estimated that a third of all fungi reproduce using more than one method of propagation. For example, reproduction may occur in two differentiated stages within the life cycle of a species, the telemorph and the anamorph. Environmental conditions trigger genetically determined developmental states that lead to the creation of specialized structures for asexual and sexual reproduction. These structures aid reproduction by efficiently dispersing spores or spore-containing propagules. There are various kinds of reproduction taking place in case of fungi. So coming to next slide, the fungi either reproduce vegetatively, asexually or sexually. In case of vegetative reproduction, fragmentation is the main important part of the reproduction, in which ascomycota and basidiomycota are the main important class of organisms which takes place, which involve the fragmentation, which involve the reproduction by fragmentation, or you can say multiply by breakage of their mycelium. The mycelium of the cells or class of organisms of ascomycota and basidiomycota, their mycelium divides or breaks into different categories or different fragments to undergo a new reproductive organism. In case of budding, some unicelled forms multiply by budding. A bud arises as a papillae, a bud from the top of the parent cell arises as the papillae on the parent cell, and then after its enlargement separates from the parent cell and completely becomes an independent nature. Okay, a small bud is formed in the parent cell. Okay, when this bud is enabled or completely enabled from the parent cell or completely grown, this will be detached from the parent cell and it is grown individually in the environment. Okay, so this is how budding takes place. Whereas fission, a few unicelled forms like yeasts or slime molds multiply by the process of fission. You can see in the earlier slide, that is in case of reproduction in fungi, that is yeast cell. I have given you a diagram. A small yeast cell developing bud, a small bud with the help of cytoplasm is developed. Later on, the new bud which is present on the top, and those buds will be increasing in nature. Okay, the chain is formed, a complete chain is formed. Once they are completely formed, they are detached from the parent cell. Okay, this is how reproduction takes place in case of vegetative propagation. Whereas coming to asexual reproduction, in case of asexual reproduction, the spore formation is done. The spores which we have seen in the first slide, that is small in the small sporangium cell, we can see the spores. Those spores are mere important characteristic features of the asexual reproduction. So I can say that sporangiospores, zoospores and Conedia are the main important features of asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction occurs via vegetative spores, that is Conedia, or through mycelial fragmentation. Mycelial fragmentation occurs when a fungal mycelium separates into pieces, that's what we have discussed, and each component grows into a separate mycelium. Mycelial fragmentation and vegetative spores maintain clonal populations adapted to a specific niche and allow more rapid dispersal than sexual reproduction. The fungi, imperfect fungi or false fungi or deuteromycota comprise of all the species that lack an observable sexual cycle. Deuteromycota is not acceptable as taxonomic clade and is now taken to mean simply fungi that lack a non-sexual state. That's why we have discussed that deuteromycota are the organisms which cannot takes place their sexual reproduction. Whereas sporangiospores are thin-walled non-motile spores formed in the sporangium. They may be unis or multinucleated cells. On account of their structure, they are also called as planospores. Whereas zoospores are thin-walled motile spores which are formed in zoosporangium. Coming to Conedia, in some fungi, the spores are not formed inside the sporangium, but they are born freely on the tips of special branches called as conidiophores. That because they are formed on the special branches of conidiophores, they are also called as Conedia. Okay. Next, coming to sexual reproduction, with the exception of deuteromycota, that is imperfect fungi, we find sexual reproduction in almost all the groups of fungi. During sexual reproduction, the compatible nuclei show a specific behavior which is responsible for the onset of distinct mycelial phases. There are three nuclear phases. There are three phases of nuclear behavior that undergo. Example, plasmogamy, which are plasmogamy, karyogamy and meiosis. Plasmogamy is nothing but fusion of two protoplasts. Fusion of two protoplasts undergo in case of plasmogamy, whereas in case of karyogamy, fusion of two nuclei takes place. Fusion of two nuclei takes place in case of karyogamy, And in meiosis, the reduction division takes place. Reduction is nothing but a diploid cell is undergoing a haploid form. So you can say in sexual reproduction, 3 phases are formed or 3 stages takes place, that is plasmogamy, karyogamy and meiosis. Plasmogamy undergoes fusion of 2 protoplasts, whereas in karyogamy, fusion of 2 nuclei takes place. In case of meiosis, the reduction division takes place. Okay. So coming to next slide, economic importance of fungi. Fungi are most important substances in nature. That is, they give you a lot of important substances. They are harmful as well as useful in nature, but mostly important or useful in nature. So you can say important microorganisms carrying out essential functions which may not be visible but are crucial in accelerating biological processes. These eukaryotic entities are closely related to the fauna and distantly related to the flora with respect to their characteristics and classifications. Fungi are osmotrophic in nature, that is, they can absorb more amount of food materials. Also, fungi possess a characteristic hyphae at their tips which carry out food exploration. They possess nucleic cells containing chromosomes. They also contain some amount of nucleic cells which contain chromosomes. They are also heterotrophs in nature, that is, they cannot synthesize own food but depend upon the dead and decaying matter, which is nothing but they clean up the earth's surface. They also reproduce through spore formation. We all know that. Examples is mushrooms. Basic examples of fungi are mushrooms. So coming to economic importance, fungi are the important organisms in human life. They play an important role in medicine by yielding antibiotics, in agriculture by maintaining soil fertility, are consumed as food and forms the basis of many industries. The basic medicine we all know about it is penicillin. That is an antibiotic which was first discovered during the World War II by Alexander Fleming from Penicillium notatum. That is nothing but a fungal element. Through that fungal element, a penicillin is formed, which is a basic antibiotic antibiotic ingredient, which is a life-saving ingredient. You can say a life-saving ingredient during those times. And even now, that penicillin is used in many cases. They are very important to humans at many levels. They are important part of the nutrient cycle in the ecosystems. They also act as pesticides. In case of biological insecticides, fungi are animal pathogens. Thus, they help in controlling the population of pests. These fungi do not infect plants and animals. They attack specifically to some insects. The fungus includes Basinia is the pesticide that is being tested to control the spread of emerald ash borer, which is a disease caused with the help of some insects. So this disease can be controlled with the help of fungi. And fungi are also used in reusing, that is, these microbes along with the bacteria bring about recycling of matter by decomposing dead matter of plants and excreta of animals in the soil. Hence the reuse enriches the soil to make it more fertile. The absence of activities of fungi can have an adverse effect on this ongoing process by continuous assembling and peeling of debris. So fungi plays a very major role in case of development of more amount of pesticides in nature and increases the soil fertility by decomposing dead and decaying matter. Importance in medicine. Metabolites of fungi are of great commercial importance. Like antibiotics are the substances produced by fungi useful for the treatment of diseases caused by pathogens. Antibiotics also produced by actinomycetes and molds inhibits the growth of other microbes too. Apart from curing diseases, antibiotics are also used to feed to animals for speedy growth and to improve meat quality also. Antibiotics are also used to preserve freshly produced meat for longer durations of time. Penicillin, which is widely used antibiotic, lethal for the survival of microbes. The reason it is extensively used is since it has no effect on human cells but kills gram-positive bacteria. Streptomycin, another antibiotics of great medical value. It is more powerful than penicillin as it destroys gram-negative bacteria too. Yield-soluble antibiotics are used to check the growth of yeast and bacteria and in treating plant diseases too. Administration of griseofulvin results in the absorption of keratinized tissues and also used to treat fungal skin diseases like ringworms and many other fungal skin infections. Ergot is used in the medicine and the vet industry. It is also used to control bleeding which is occurred during post-childbirth. Lysergic acid is a derivative of ergot and is used in the field of psychiatry. Consuming fungi called Clavitia prevents cancer of the stomach too. And coming to importance in agriculture, the fungi plant dynamic is essential in productivity of crops, as well as fungal activity in farmlands contributes to the growth of plants is about 70%. Fungi are important in the process of humus formation as it brings about the degeneration of plants and animal matter. They are successively used in biological control of pests, and as well as plant pests are used as insecticides to control activities of insects. Use of fungal pesticides can reduce environmental hazards by a great extent. That is nothing but they can control more amount of pollution. Fungi are also used in agriculture research. Some species of fungi are used in the detection of certain elements such as copper and arsenic in soil and in the production of enzymes. For instance, biological and genetic research on fungi named Neurospora led to the one gene, one enzyme hypothesis. The fungi live in symbiotic relationship with the plant's root known as mycorrhizae. These are essential to enhance the productivity of a farmland. 80 to 90% of trees could not survive without fungal partner in the root system. So these are mainly important characteristic features of fungi. Coming to food industry, some fungi are used in food processing while some are directly consumed. For example, mushrooms, which are rich in proteins and minerals and very low in fat. Fungi constitute the basis in the baking and brewing industry. They bring about fermentation of sugar by an enzyme called as zymase, producing alcohol, which is used to make wine. Carbon dioxide, a byproduct in the process, is used as a dry ice and also in the baking industry to make the dough, rising and lightening of dough. Saccharomyces is an important ingredient in bread, a staple food of humans from several years. It is also known as the baker's yeast. That is Saccharomyces cerevisiae is also known as baker's yeast. So these are the main important features of fungi, which gives you a more importance, or you can say more usefulness of fungi. But as fungi are much useful, but some fungi are also harmful to human beings. Like fungi also causes certain amount of plant diseases. Storage of more amount of fungi causes rots in fruits and as well as food. Fungi also causes some amount of human diseases as well as animal diseases, and production of fungal toxins is also done when it is stored for a longer period of time. And when the fungi is like during the moist conditions or during the rainy conditions, there is a lot of fungal growth or fungal growth in the moist clothes. Okay, when there is a moisture present, you can see a growth of fungi in the walls or on the corners of places where there is a moisture logged. Okay, so more amount of paper and as well as wood is also been damaged with the help of fungi. So when compared to its advantages, there are also some amount of disadvantages in case of fungi. So fungi are both harmful and useful to human beings. So you can say they are friends as well as enemies to mankind. So these are about the fungi. So coming to our next topic, we have got a small topic known as lichens. So before going to other topics, we'll be completing this kingdom Plantae and kingdom fungi. But kingdom Plantae and kingdom fungi, we will be discussing it in detail about kingdom Plantae in our next chapter. So you will just have a glance about what is kingdom Plantae. That is, these are multicellular eukaryotes which contain cell walls, and the cell wall is made up of cellulose. We all know what is kingdom Plantae mainly belonging to. That is, kingdom Plantae includes all the plants. They are eukaryotic, multicellular and autotrophic organisms. The plant cell contains a rigid cell wall which contains chloroplast, chlorophyll pigments, which is used for photosynthesis. What is the main characteristic features of Plantae? They are non-motile in nature, hence they are, they cannot prepare their own food. They can prepare their own food, hence they are photosynthetic in nature. They are multicellular eukaryotic cells. They contain chlorophyll pigments and they have got some cell organelles, and reproduction, support and photosynthesis takes place in them. So classification, next slide, you can see classification of plant kingdom is divided based on different categories based on their plant body, vascular system and seed formation. Based on these characteristic features, the fungi are divided into different categories, that is Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnosperms and Angiosperms. So based on these characteristic features, fungi are divided into different categories. So Thallophyta are nothing but kingdom Plantae is divided based on two categories, cryptogams and phanerogams. Cryptogams are nothing but seedless fruits, seedless plants, or phanerogams are seed bearing, that is seed producing plants, which come under seed bearing. You can see gymnosperms and angiosperms, whereas in seedless, Thallophyta, Bryophyta and Pteridophyta. So you can see below the examples of Thallophyta, Bryophyta and Pteridophyta. Algae lichens comes under the category of Thallophyta, whereas mosses, liverworts and hornworts comes in the category of Bryophyta. Ferns comes under the category of Pteridophyta. Gymnosperms and angiosperms are angiosperms are again divided into two types, that is monocotyledons and dicotyledons, that is single cotyledon and dicotyledon. We will be studying in detail about all these classifications in our fourth chapter, that is kingdom Plantae. Okay, so in the next slide we can see about kingdom Animalia, that is what is Animalia? Animalia kingdoms include all the cells, all the eukaryotic, multinuclear eukaryotic cells without the cell wall. They are heterotrophic. Of course, all the animals are heterotrophic in nature, that is they depend on other organisms for the food purpose. They cannot directly prepare their food. And the storage of food is in the form of glycogen or fat cells. And the mode of nutrition is holozoic, that is ingestion of food materials, and there is a definite growth pattern, and reproduction takes place by sexual means, that is by copulation of male and female organisms. Okay, so the classification of Animalia, you can see kingdom, levels of organization, symmetry, body cavity and phylum. So based on these classifications, the animal kingdom is divided into Porifera, Cnidaria, Ctenophora, Platyhelminthes, Aschelminthes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata, Hemichordata and Chordata. Human beings belongs to the class of Chordata. Human beings belong to the class of Chordata. So in detail about all this animal kingdom, you will be studying in your zoology subject. Okay. So coming to next topic. So you can see a small category, a small separate category of organisms which are not coming under these five kingdoms are called as virus, virions and lichens. So what are viruses? We all know. These are non-cellular organisms which are having inert crystalline structure, that is they live out. The structure is usually present outside the cell. These are obligate parasites, that is they depend upon any host cell to multiply in nature. So they are venomous, that is poisonous in nature, and it was first discovered by Louis Pasteur. The viruses were first discovered by Louis Pasteur. The main ingredients which is present in viruses are proteins, and genetic material could be RNA or DNA. Whereas there is a protein coat called as capsid. Protein coat called as capsid which is present around the virus, and there are small subunits called as capsomeres. Small subunits called as capsomeres, and which these capsomeres protects the nucleic acid, that is the DNA or RNA material which is present inside the viral cell. These capsomeres are arranged in the form of helical structure, okay, in a form of polyhedral structure. You can see the diagram. In the next slide, you can see the diagram of virus structure. So viruses can cause diseases like mumps, smallpox, herpes and influenza. AIDS is also commonly caused with the help of virus. In plants, the mosaic formation, leaf rolling and curling, yellowing and vein clearing, dwarfing and stunted growth. All these are done with all these are caused due to the viral infections. So viruses are very small organisms which contains DNA or RNA material. They contain a protein coat called as capsid with small subunits called as capsomeres which protect the nucleic acid, and these capsomeres are arranged in the form of helical or polyhedral geometric forms. So coming to next slide, you can see the diagram of virus. In the next slide, you can see viroids. Viroids are nothing but, these are also viruses but smaller viruses. You can see the viroids are very small in structure when compared to viruses, and these are more dangerous, or you can say more poisonous than the viruses. You can say because they contain free RNA molecule, that is they do not contain any protein coat. Instead, like in viruses we have seen some protein coat, that is capsomeres. In viroids you cannot see any protein coats, okay, hence they are named as viroid. The RNA of the viroid has low molecular weight, and these in plants they are mostly causing the disease called potato spindle tuber disease. So coming to lichens, that just now we have discussed about lichens, that is they are a symbiotic relationship between fungi and algae. The algal component is called as phycobiont, whereas the fungal component is called as mycobiont in nature. This is a very important VSAQ question for you. Algae prepare food for fungi, and fungi provide shelter to and absorb mineral nutrients and water for its partner, that is for algae. So close is their association, that is, one saw a lichen in nature, one would never imagine that they had two different organisms within them. Lichens are very good pollution indicators, that is, they will not grow in places where more pollution is present. We have just now discussed that fungus is usually seen in moist and warm conditions. So usually lichens are also seen in some damp or marshy areas or moist conditions. So lichens, you can see lichens, growth of lichens is mostly seen in non-polluted waters. So they are also called as pollution indicators. So with this, we will be completing our second chapter, that is biological classification, and I'll